All right, I want to take it actually a bit of a different direction, going back to something that you said earlier when it comes to how Christians in particular are dialoguing and I don't know if calling out other things about their own faith online is kind of the tonality, but there's a really interesting thing in Pope Francis's recent encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, in a section regarding social media discourse. Really interesting, right? You have this big, like the leader of the or the like earthly ministry leader of the entire Catholic Church, one of the biggest religious organizations, talking about social media discourse. He says this, and I'm quoting: "Dialogue is often confused with something quite different. The feverish exchange of opinions on social networks, frequently based on media information that is not always reliable. These exchanges are merely parallel monologues. They may attract some attention by their sharp and aggressive tone, but monologues engage no one, and their content is frequently self-serving and contradictory. Indeed, the media's noisy potpourri of facts and opinions is often an obstacle to dialogue, since it lets everyone cling stubbornly to his or her own ideas, interests, and choices with the excuse that everyone else is wrong. It becomes easier to discredit and insult opponents from the outset rather than to open a respectful dialogue aimed at achieving agreement on a deeper level." Powerful paragraph. Could do a whole show just with that thing. But my question to you, Dave, is, and you're pretty active on social media too, so I know you've probably seen a lot of this and experienced a lot, have been a part of the conversation in this respect. How can we achieve better unity in the age of social media to foster better dialogue in our conversations that actually moves any conversation forward?
Yeah, you're right. I am somewhat active on social media. I don't have a Twitter account, but I am on certain social media areas, and I believe that I have learned through hardship sometimes, where sometimes way in the past I wasn't communicating as well, and I paid a price for it. So hopefully I've done a little bit better. But how can we do a better job? This paragraph is so interesting. Like, coming from this, what is he, like 80 years old? This 80 years old guy who has a Twitter account in Rome.
Yeah.
But there's so much there to unpack. The first thing I think that we need to look at here is what actually dialogue even is.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's, like, fundamentally, we have to understand what that is so that we can know where we're even going.
Sure.
Fundamentally, dialogue, what it is, it's the exchange of ideas through words. That's what it means. And so let's talk about what the purpose of dialogue is then. And the purpose of it is so that we can come to a realization of the truth. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what I would say is what dialogue is. Now, so, mediums like Facebook, Twitter, all this stuff, I don't mean to go pick on them or call them out or anything. I think actually they're really great tools.
Yeah.
But they also have these things built into them which just completely shut off dialogue. So for instance, like the block unfriend idea.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like you, so block unfriend. So what has happened here is not only is there no dialogue, there's no chance at even ever rekindling that dialogue again.
Yeah.
Now, so, one of the things that he mentioned in this paragraph here was this concept of what's called parallel monologues. And hearing that phrase got me kind of thinking about someone in my life who I'm, very, very close to. And we have, I would say we have very spirited conversations.
Yeah.
On all kinds of things, politics, religion, all kinds of things. It's, it's a loving relationship, but very spirited conversations. And one time he said to me that, we're just talking past each other. And my response to that is going to be, well, who's talking past who though? Because that's not ever my intention to talk past you. So, we have to find out, we have to get back down to the bottom here and figure out whose fault is it that we are quote unquote talking past each other. And what does that even mean to begin with? And, to me, what that means, it sounds like someone's not willing to listen and someone's not willing to be wrong.
Yeah.
And so, when you're engaging people on places like Facebook, Twitter, other social media areas out there, we have to, first of all, we have to be humble in our approach, and we have to understand there is a very real chance we could be wrong here. Okay. I think you might have heard me say this before, but I'll say it again because it's relevant to this point right here. I oftentimes say this when I'm talking to people about particularly the Catholic Church. If someone can prove the church wrong, I am out.
Yeah.
Like I am gone. Because if the church is wrong, then it's not the church.
Yeah. There's,
and so,
sorry, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought. I have a follow-up.
The only thing I was going to say there, Josh, is, when we're engaging, particularly when you're engaging in something like Christianity or, something like that, some like hot button issue. Don't talk about politics or religion. I talk about religion. I would say that when we are communicating with these kinds of things, with regard to Christianity, for instance, put your faith on the line, literally.
Yeah.
Put it on the line and show that you're willing to lose it, because really, if you're not willing to put it on the line, that means you don't even have confidence in it in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. And what it gets back to too, and I think about this a lot. This is hits very home to me because this is part of my own spiritual journey, intellectual journey, whatever kind of journey you want to look at it. This free exchange of ideas is such a powerful piece of what it means to be human. I mean, this is what separates us from the rocks in the ground, is our ability to have spirited discussions, right? And the very fact, this is always interesting to me, for a society and culture. I know we've touched on relativism before, and this idea that your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth, and that's okay. We can have separate truths even if they're contradictory, and that's fine, right? But what's interesting to me is the very fact that we get in arguments points to the fact that we don't believe that, right? We don't sit there and we don't live out that thought of like, oh, you can believe what you believe, I can believe what I believe. Sure. And we get that way because until it gets really personal, where I feel like it's impinging on my ability to live out that truth or whatever it is, that's when it becomes divisive. But the very fact that we have disagreements in conversation points to the fact that we actually do believe that there is some sort of objective truth out there that we're uncovering. And if we take that as the framework and we start working towards that idea of what is true in the context of whatever conversation we're having online, whether it's religion, politics, whatever, and our goal is to get at truth, we stay the pride, we throw it to the side, and just like you're suggesting, hey, I'm willing to be wrong here, and I want to make that forefront of the essay. That, to be honest, was a massive moment for me in my own personal journey, because it wasn't until I said, look, if this church thing is false, I don't want any part of it. And if this religion thing is false, I don't want any part of it. And I am willing to become an atheist if that means that I get to the truth of the thing. Because at this point in my life, I wanted truth. I didn't want this fabricated thing. I didn't want anything like that. And what became very apparent through my conversation dialogue is I was able to be more honest. I was able to have better conversations. I wasn't held up on and bent on anything that I had already. But what my goal in conversing with people is what, to me personally, made the most sense. That's the personal aspect of this objective truth. Truth can be objective, but we may not accept it, right? And so that was always fascinating to me, because it wasn't until I released that, and there's a freedom once you release that. You feel free, and there's a freedom in your ability to have a conversation with people. It's not until you release that, give that away, that desire to always be right. It's not until that goes away that you can actually have real, authentic conversation that is focused on getting to truth, and you can be honest in a way that you wouldn't before.
No question. Absolutely. Bravo. You kind of brought up, hey, if the church is wrong and being atheist is the right thing to do, fine. Then show me that it's the right thing to do.
Exactly.
Me right now in my worldview, it seems logically incoherent that atheism is correct. Mm-hmm. It seems incorrect. But, if I'm wrong there, show me how I'm wrong, and prove it to me. Prove me that the church is wrong. Again, if the church is not right, I'll put it all on the line there. True. And if you can prove to me that the church is not right, I'm out, man. Yeah. If it's not the truth, it's not even worth doing.
Yeah. And this has been really big for me too, because a piece of that is, you often say that, oh, it'll show me that it's wrong. And everybody's got that. I do it too. And this is, I'm talking to myself here, a sobering moment. Hey, I'm going to give you this argument. And this was the silver bullet argument that made the most sense to me. And then we don't expect any opposition for whatever reason. We don't expect people to question it, to wrestle with it, to actually have counterpoint arguments. But that's the dialogue. That's the discussion part of having a conversation.
And what's the purpose of it?
What's the purpose of it? And there's one things I've found, and it's one of those things, you don't know how much you know until you realize how little you know, the more you know, right? And it's one of the things you really uncover is there's a counter argument in so many instances to almost anything. Somebody's going to, whether it's good or bad, doesn't matter. There's a counter argument. Just expect it. Expect there to be one there. And then be really good at identifying what's good about it, identifying what you might disagree about it, and address those tonalities. It's got zero to do with the person. It's got everything to do with the conversation.
Exactly.
Yep,
absolutely.
Pope Francis, he goes on in the letter, he says this. He goes on to say this, and I'm quoting again, authentic social dialogue involves the ability to respect the other's point of view and to admit that it may include legitimate convictions and concerns. Based on their identity and experience, others have a contribution to make, and it is desirable that they should articulate their positions for the sake of a more fruitful public debate. When individuals or groups are consistent in their thinking, defend their values and convictions, and develop their arguments, this surely benefits society. Yet, this can only occur to the extent that there is genuine dialogue and openness to others. Indeed, in a true spirit of dialogue, we grow in our ability to grasp the significance of what others say and do, even if we cannot accept it as our own conviction. In this way, it becomes possible to be frank and open about our beliefs while continuing to discuss, to seek points of contact, and above all, to work and struggle together. End quote. The leader of the largest religious organization said this, by the way. This wasn't a secular author. Looking at this, Dave, why do you think that's so challenging for us to do right now?
Well, I think the reason that it's challenging is because people just don't like to be proven wrong, or they don't like to be wrong. And, I think deep down, and, I'm guilty of it too. This is not like, look at all you guys out there. This is me too. I think people are stubborn. People like to dig into their things. Yeah. And, I think that's something that we need to examine inside of ourselves. Am I willing to be proven wrong? And if I'm proven wrong, am I willing to admit, hey, you know what? I'm wrong there. Am I willing to admit that I'm stubborn? And, yes, of course I'm willing. Ask my wife. She'll I'm stubborn like an ox, man.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, like, we have to recognize that on ourselves so that we can have that genuine dialogue that we're trying to have. And, genuine dialogue, what he's talking about is having an openness to others, again, like, get back to the purpose of dialogue in the first place. It's to get to the truth.
Yeah.
And so, he's talking about this charitable dialogue, and charitable dialogue, even though you and I disagree, okay? We talked, I don't know if it was this podcast or the other one, but we talked about, like, children in mass.
Sure.
We can have a charitable dialogue about that, and we can disagree, and that charitable dialogue is going to benefit our relationship. Yep. And then you put that in the broader scope, and that's going to benefit society, that we can work together towards the proper end, which is the truth.
Yeah.
Then, like, let's push that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important too. The one piece, there's one thing I try and do with my wife, and I encourage other married couples to do it, and it's you create this safe space to have honesty. The minute somebody feels attacked, they feel negative vibes, influences directed at them for whatever position they hold, they are not going to be honest with you, pure and simple. Yeah. And one of the things I think we have to be really, really conscious of just in culture and society today, especially in the religious conversation and the political conversation, is you have to be good about cultivating conversation and dialogue. A safe space for people to have their thoughts and opinions heard, questioned, brought out into the public sphere in a way that's non-threatening to them. So that way you can get to the heart of the matter. because shutting it down doesn't change a heart, doesn't change the person. They're not going to come over to your side just because you told them they were wrong. Hate to break it to you, but that's just not how people operate. Hey everyone, thank you so much for checking out this clip from the Practical Theism podcast. If you enjoyed this clip and you want to check out the full episode, you can do so by finding it on our YouTube channel. Definitely consider subscribing and ringing that little bell so you can continue to get updates, notifications when we release new episodes and new clips just like this one. I hope to see you soon.